Hello and welcome to TrishRockTV and Energy Shift, changing energy, shifting perceptions. I'm Trish Rock, your abundance identity coach and mentor. In this episode of Trish Rock TV, we talk to one of the most joyous and happy people that I have the pleasure of knowing, Pat Armitstead. Now, Pat is a pioneer and thought leader in the area of joy as a transformational agent. From her early years as a registered nurse, she has championed the human spirit, leading people to find joy where it appeared there was none. Her unique personal perspectives, traumatic past, repeated losses, and eventual mastery as a multi-award winning speaker, TV and radio host, and exhibiting artist are a rare combination of talents. A master storyteller, she combines positive psychology principles, emotional intelligence, and neuroscience with real human experiences to bring understanding and meaning to life events. Pat sees crisis as a catalyst for personal growth and ongoing transformation, enabling higher levels of intimate communication and authentic expression. I love that. Welcome, 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 Pat.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, how exciting. And I just love how the words, you're such a master with words too. The words are so descriptive there, and you truly are unique in what you bring and how you bring it. So I'm so thrilled to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure. So Pat, what called you to become the world's first joyologist? And you might like to explain what a joyologist is as well.
Well, as the name suggests, any word that has ologist at the end infers that somebody is exploring, it's the study of something.
Okay.
So, if you're a joyologist, so studying joy. So, to my knowledge, I was the world's first. In 2001, I came through 4 years, a succession of losses, and the final straw was my partner of 20 years leaving with another woman. And I loved your language is really important to me now.
Yeah.
The last words that my partner said when he left was, "No, I don't love you, and I never loved you."
Oh.
And in that moment, I disintegrated.
Yeah.
I thought, if that's true, then everything I've ever known is not true. Yeah. And so there was that just total disintegration.
That's like the total opposite of joy.
Yes, and of course I know now it was not the truth, but that's where I went at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why now I have such a stronghold for myself to be finding language that will be a balm, that's healing, restorative, regenerative, and endeavouring, it's fairly easy to write that, but to get it to be, consistently languaging verbally has been a bit of a mission. So,
absolutely, because you need the energy behind the words too, and if you're not feeling that energy, then it can't be translated into those words.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I tell people is that I didn't learn about joy through studying joy.
No.
I learned about joy through my experience of shame, grief, and embarrassment.
Yeah.
And my doctor at the time wanted to medicate me.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I don't want to be medicated.
Yeah.
There's been this whole raft of things happen over a 4-year period. Help me with my grief.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the person to support me with that. And so I just I just went looking for another way. There was no broader description than that.
Yeah.
And two things happened. I went to a grieving seminar in Auckland that had been put on for 400 parents who had lost their children or were losing their children.
Okay.
A chap who had worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was running the seminar to support these parents to create their own network when they left the embrace of Starship Hospital, the children's hospital.
Okay. Yeah.
So 400 people in that energetic place. You can imagine such grief in the room. Absolutely. And anguish. And on the same night, I had a conversation with a magician in South Australia who was inviting me to bring laughter workshops to New Zealand. And I was living in New Zealand at the time. And an amazing conversation. And in a minute, there was just a lull. And in that little lull, I just got a message. And it was, oh my God, we've got radiology, pathology, hematology, but no joyology. I'm going to be a joyologist. So there it was. And I had no idea what it meant. I was like a dog with bone for the next couple of weeks, asking for advice and guidance.
Thank goodness you listened to that divine inspired idea that came.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was no question about something else working here.
Yeah.
And so I did 2 pilot programs, a 3-month one and a 12-month one. And it was at the end of that period that I really was able to draw together enough to really get an idea now of what I'm going to do with this. And by 2004, I had a brand, and I toured with Patch Adams through Russia's orphanages.
Wow.
And that really was 16 days of being totally present.
Yes.
In a way I've never experienced presence.
Yeah.
And totally connected to the disparity between rich and poor.
Yeah.
And I returned from that journey feeling more vital and alive than I've ever felt in my whole life.
Yeah.
And it was because I was present to it all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, one thing when you say that, you ended up in a group of grieving parents, and what came to mind for me was that now I think it's a little bit different, but at the time, people didn't understand the grief of marriages that ended either. And, that's a big grief, but groups didn't gather for that. I think they do now, but at that time they didn't gather for that. So, you were probably feeling lost too, not knowing where to go for support. Doctors only just want to give you stuff to numb it all. So a real blessing you ended up there and took that divine action. And I mean, even just being introduced to a magician, right? You can't write this stuff, Pat. You can't make this stuff up.
No. And, it just a few years later, I think it was about 2006, I did Dr. John DeMartini's Breakthrough Experience program.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I really learned there was if we are present, then we will see challenge and support side by side.
Yeah.
In my past, it was support came, but the closeness of it wasn't apparent to me. And, I really when I did his program, I got to see how the previous 5 or 6 years had been full of that, but I could reflect back and go, oh my goodness, there were just so many realizations. And because I got present to my life, so I did see that. So life still does what it does.
Yeah,
that hasn't changed.
But when you're present, it's like it's like one of the Hermetic laws of polarity. There is always that polarity of dark or light, or challenge or support. But when you're present to it, you can bring it in so that it doesn't feel like it's such a wide gap there, because if you're in one and it's such a big way to get to the other, it's very difficult to move into a place of peace. So yeah. So what are the 5 key recommendations, Pat, that you would make to people who are hurting out there right now?
I had a long think about this question. It was it has so many facets, but I think some of the things for me, and for my own journey and for what I use when I'm coaching, is when we can look back on a bit of a timeline and look at those key defining moments, the Mack truck, the wake up call, or the significant thing that triggered something in us, and then look at them, from above, at a distance, then we can begin to make meaning of them. You were commenting on some of my art behind me earlier, and in my grieving program, I have people make art like this.
Wow.
And we track their story. We look at myths, legends, fairy tales, colour, symbolism, and bring something together combined with their traumatic experience, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And so, we're meaning-making machines,
yeah.
and when we can make meaning of something, then we can have it sit in a different place.
Yeah.
It rests in our body and in our lives a little bit differently. And it doesn't mean that grief is over, but we're in a much more settled place about who we can be moving forward. So I think, and journaling can be a pathway to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding the blessings in everything. Yeah.
Yes. Spilling onto the page, it's like tidying your desk as you empty your mind of the clutter and the hunya stuff, then we get this clarity.
Yeah.
Because the mind is a lot freer.
Yeah.
And another thing for me has been, and I discovered this from 2001, to find your joy, I have 2 peak moments.
Yep.
When I'm presenting and the lights go on for somebody in the room, that's one of them. It's like, done my job.
Yeah.
And then when I'm painting and creating, I don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
There's just myself and the canvas, and I'm at one. And my art is actually informed by my encounters with humanity, so I need both.
Yes.
And I know in order to be, I'm not always happy, but to be happy and fulfilled, to use that phrase, I need to be constantly working in endeavouring to get a balance of both.
Yes.
In my life. So they're the 2 main things. There are other things too. So knowing what that is for yourself,
yeah.
When's my peak moment and how can I be creating it? Even though this is going on in my life, finding, time for that.
Yeah, and find that connection, and you connect with art, and feel like you're in alignment when you're creating that art. So it's, finding what brings you into alignment so that you can step out of the head for a little while, right, and make sense of things. Yeah.
I've been using a term for the last 20 years, fully self-expressed.
Yeah.
And I realise I've been endeavouring to do that all my life, but I was in a conforming pattern. I was a nurse for 16 years, so more or less I did what I was told.
Yeah.
We got to keep people safe. So, no room for full self-expression in nursing.
No.
Just the very nature of it. So when I left nursing, I started a video production company and became a small advertising agency. So just like Paul,
Total opposites.
Across a whole range of platforms. And now I'm realising at the turn of the century, I actually stepped into another place where I can meld my compassionate and creative self and serve humanity.
Yeah.
So, you know, the level of clarity and being able to own that.
Yeah.
You know, to own what I've done. And it's a hard word, but we've got to really, it's embodying it.
Absolutely, and owning all of those parts of ourselves. You know, a lot of people only want to own the supposedly good bits, but all of the other bits are all serving a purpose too, and actually bring us to the good bits. So it's really seeing all of it on a level. And so you work with people to find those ways that they can find some peace within themselves with everything, and try to accept all of it, because I mean that ultimately will bring the joy when you are accepting of all of that. Now, what do you think about you know, when people are out of alignment, Pat? And I feel that stress and depression and anxiety are all indications of being out of alignment with our heart space, with our center, and with who we really are. So what do you think about depression, and what part does humour and laughter play in lifting that depression or depressive state for people?
I've been exploring that for a long time. When I first started, it was like very much focused on humour, and now it's become much more expansive and a lot deeper. But humour is still a very big focal point. And one of the things I've learned, and I now am an advocate for, is we have to learn to be good-humoured. And to be good-humoured is not about being a comedian or a clown. It's about being appropriately responsive or not.
Yeah. Or not. Yeah.
And knowing the difference.
Yeah.
And knowing when you can and when you can't. So you need to know yourself very deeply, and you need to have an appreciation for who's in the room. I did was at a presentation many years ago, and a statistician was talking, and there were 100 women in the room, and it was probably one of the most boring presentations I've heard for, you know, ever. However, it was a huge gem, because as she was going on and on about all the statistics for, you know, all different types of cancers, all the different workplace injuries, drownings, shark attacks, snake attacks, etc., I just got it. And I looked around the room and I thought, they're all here today. Every time 100 people come together, I don't have to know the story.
Yeah.
There'll be at least 10 or 11 people in the room who've lost a baby.
Yeah.
There'll be 1 in 6 who've either had breast cancer or know somebody who does. And, you know, those statistics just became really evident. So that passing parade, walking in the street, people coming into the shop front, that's who's arriving. So, you know, when we can be present to that, then the whole dynamic changes.
Yes.
You know, our aura shifts. People say, what are you on?
You're different.
You know, or who are you?
Yeah.
You know, because they're sensing something. So when I was on the tour with Patch Adams, he shared with me one day his mother had diabetes, and she had 1 limb removed through poor circulation.
Yeah.
And he was there when she woke up. And as her eyelids fluttered open, he's patting her hand and he said, well, Ma, now you know what it's like to have 1 foot in the grave.
I love that.
only Pat could say that to his mother.
Absolutely.
Yeah? So it's highly inappropriate, except that there's context and there's relationship.
There's actually truth in it.
Yes. And you know, if we could achieve that level of high trust environment in all of our encounters, in all of our relationships,
yeah,
how different would things be?
Absolutely. You know, and I think me included, you know, we all just grow up taking everything so personally, and it tortures us. It really tortures us. But to be in the present moment and understand that, you know, really nothing is personal and yet everything is personal. It's in that moment, you know, what am I feeling about what just happened, and you know, how can I find peace with it? That's not taking things personally, and that's really being in the moment and being okay. Because, you know, a lot of with depression and anxiety and even with grief, I guess, to a certain point, you're either in the past or you're in the future. You're not there in that present moment. And it brings, it's one of the most difficult things, isn't it, for people to do, is to come into the present moment. But when you learn to be there, it changes everything. It changes everything.
One of the things that's become so apparent to me, again, this last 20 years, is we have become grief illiterate.
Yeah.
Other cultures are steeped in ritual and ceremony.
Yes.
And us white guys have hardly any. You couldn't really call Easter eggs and Santa, you know, deeply spiritual. And so, you know, we hardly sit at the table to, you know, come together as a family. So we don't place a lot of reverence for things. We don't honour each other and life in a way that some other cultures do. The American Indian, the New Zealand Maori, Australian Aboriginals, Greeks and Italians. Yeah. You know, I remember all my years.
Isn't it? Because they're all connected in their villages. Yeah.
Yes, you know, if somebody where I nursed was a very big Greek and Italian community out there, so if one of the family was in hospital, then everybody came to visit. And don't you be the nurse to tell them that you can't have 34 people in the room. Not going to listen. You know, but what a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that connection, and even grief in the tribal villages. You know, they all connect, and they're still connecting with the person they've lost, and everyone is still connecting. And you know, that's actually another really big word, I guess, and dilemma that society's in now is the lack of connection because of social media and people becoming really isolated with human connection. So is that something that you feel like, especially when you have a whole lot of people gathered and you're speaking with them, is that something you feel that really brings them their mood and that up as well, the fact that they're even there connected to all those people in the room?
Yeah, I think last year I did 20 engagements around Australia, 4 national tours into a company with 26,000 staff.
Wow.
And I addressed the leaders in that business and the board members. It was a mental health in the workplace program designed to educate them about anxiety, depression, stress, and suicide ideation.
Yep.
And principally to enable them to be having brave conversations, to know what to say after they've said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Because if you get the answer back, actually, "No, I'm not," what do I say now?
Yeah.
And one of my biggest delights was time after time, you create I pride myself on creating a high trust environment. So within an hour, it was a one-day program, repeatedly, men would stand up and reveal stuff that their colleagues in the room had no idea was going on in their lives. One man revealed about his father and his long journey with very bad schizophrenia. Another man shared with me how he and his wife used to walk every afternoon, very committed to their physical health. He said, "Pat, but she drives me mad." He said, "She never stops talking." And I said to him, we didn't have time to go into it in depth through the session, but I said, hold that thought, because there'll be something here for you today. So at the end, when I closed that session and asked everyone, what are you leaving with? Everyone else around the boardroom had stayed in their seats to feedback, but he actually stood up and he said, "Pat, I need you to know that today I'm going home to be present to my wife." He said, "I never realised till today that she actually suffers with anxiety."
Wow.
So, and he got a standing ovation.
Wow. Yeah, that just gave me goosebumps.
This is leaders in a very big business.
Yeah.
Board member of a very big company, you know, so there's a huge kind of financial and big picture management.
Yeah.
But look at what's happening. And, you know, one of my deep wishes is to, you know, if we can clear the space, get rid of the blocks and the triggers, the old grief, the things that are, you know, if I do that again, I might get hurt, that are holding us back, then we free other people who are very highly skilled, who could be doing this thing in their own way, you know, enabling others in their own way. And, you know, when people, I got 3.5 and 4 out of all of the 550 leaders, all scored me 3.5 and 4 out of 4. But I got one email feedback a couple of days later from one session telling me that, you know, some people had been triggered. And I got back to them and I said, brilliant, that's where I want to work.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to work at that intersection.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and I also want to encourage other people to get yourself to that place so that you can do that too. In your own, whatever work you're doing, you know, so you can be fully self-expressed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And more and more people are finding the way, aren't they? They're being called to say, you know, I'm out of alignment here, there's more. Please direct me to the next thing. And they're listening to their divine guidance, which is really lovely. I mean, even those people in the room with you were there for, nothing's random. They, you know, everybody's in the right place at the right time all the time. And yeah, that's brilliant that you've got that beautiful ability to create that safety, that space of safety, because, you know, some of those people who would have stood up on that particular day, and I'm sure all the other trainings that you do, have had their stuff bottled up in them for so long, and just to create that space for people to breathe and breathe it out is life-changing. It's life-changing. So
and that's one of the gifts of humour. Humour can be quite confronting.
Yeah.
Use it in that fashion. You know, if you want to create something, and see comedians do it all the time, right? Some of what they say is just preposterous. and so even though it's almost like offensive, because it's funny in its offence. So I've been, last year I did a 13-part series called The Laughter Channel, where human interest meets humour interest. All about that exploration. Where does our humanity intersect with our capacity to be good-humoured, to be funny, and to how does that work? So we've got that in light-hearted banter, right? We chatting and we engage, and there's that rapport, and it's like a tennis match almost.
Yep.
But then when we go a bit deeper, then we can dare to go further. And again, humour takes you off the path.
Yeah.
Yanks you off into the bushes. And like I've had people say to me, oh, that story about Patch Adams' mother's was a bit, wasn't it? And it's like, well, only because of your sensitivity.
That's right.
And that's not an error on their part. It's like just getting people to become more self-aware.
Absolutely, and like with everything, it's the intention behind it. And I mean, people like Patch Adams probably offended a lot of people, but his intention behind what he said was always love and compassion. And when you connect on that level, you can really break through all sorts of barriers.
Absolutely. So, and daring to go where no one else will go.
Absolutely.
He's been dressed as a clown since his early 20s. Like, he has no other clothes. He doesn't have a suit. Suddenly wants to go and be a doctor. And on the tour with him one day, he said to me, Pat, he said, set yourself a goal so big you can never possibly hope to achieve it, and then sit out and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, it's great.
He said he's created Gesundheit, the free facility, but it's not in the expression that he hoped it would be. The movie was made about him. Robin Williams, starred him in the movie. But it didn't bring him what he hoped it would in terms of funding to make that project happen.
Yeah.
But if you look at the enormity of what he's done around the world, and he doesn't have to do it on his own anymore.
No.
On the tour, there was a young boy who had both legs removed because of melanoma, and somebody Patch knew in Italy, a rich Italian man, just put his hand up and he said, I'll look after this boy for all his needs until he's grown up. And he just has, my tour with Patch Adams actually had nothing to do with Patch Adams.
Yeah.
He just created the platform for me to step out in a level of freedom through clowning and improv and performance.
Yeah.
To find a fuller expression of myself, and
and it's in the relationships that that his work is building that helps his funding and all the rest of it. But it also it was also pivotal and in your life, wasn't it, to go on that tour? So it's got that ripple effect now of you now helping with that work too, which is brilliant.
When I began, I didn't know what I was going to talk about, so I ended up talking to the Arthritis Foundation, Chronic Fatigue, MS Society, all of those groups that support people with painful chronic conditions. And then 2004 rocks along and I announced I'm touring with Patch. And probably for 6 months in the lead up, I received a bunch of mail, like in the post box mail, from older people with MS, cancer, right, all those, from donations from all of those groups.
Wow.
Usually $5 or $10 only. One lady sent me a book of stamps so I could write home while I was away. And I just really got, yes, look what I did. I was practicing, but I was just being in service.
Yes.
There was no pay for those early engagements. I had the opportunity to see practice
Yeah.
what it was I was going to say, totally in service to them.
Absolutely.
You know? And look what came back. One person gave me $270 a week for 16 weeks.
Wow. It's amazing, isn't it?
Her and a husband.
And so that's really you operating on total faith, and you know, that's really one of the things now that you teach your clients, because when you are in the present moment, you do operate from faith. and you know, look at the amazing work you've done now, and all the lives that you've changed. So it's just incredible. I just, you know, you have to kind of see, let's go back to the beginning now, and that devastating day when your husband said those things to you. But what an absolute blessing now that happened, because look at how many lives, including your own, that you've changed, you know, because of that one defining moment. Could have defined you in a whole different way, right?
Yes. And, you know, he wasn't my son's natural father, but he helped me rear my son for 20 years, and forever grateful for that.
Yeah.
And he left with this other woman, and she was slim and blonde, and I was insanely jealous of this woman. And I knew if I didn't heal that, I was going to get sick.
Absolutely. And which means that he still has the power over you. If you're going to get sick from that, you know.
Yes. And so off we went on a journey, and a friend was helping me, very spiritual person, and she said, I want you to start writing to the other woman, right? I want you to forgive her. So I did that, and the first time I did it, I had a piece of paper, and I'm standing in the doorway with both front and back doors open, doing all a ritual.
Clearing.
with a cigarette lighter, and the paper would not burn.
Oh my goodness.
And I rang my friend, and I was crying and upset. I said, I can't believe this, the paper won't even burn. And she just laughed as you laugh. And it's like, do you get how powerful we are?
Yeah.
So I worked on that, and I don't think I ever totally got rid of it. But when I ended up with a little piece of paper about this before the rest burned away, I thought, I'm done. That's close enough.
Yeah.
And my getting out of the way has enabled he and my son to have an enduring relationship. You know, that was very important for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So, is there any final words you'd like to say to people? Any advice? And how can they work with you? Or how can they connect with you, Pat?
I think we forget that even all those little disappointments in life actually create grief. Small amounts of grief. Loss is loss, and there's no mine's bigger than yours. So learning more about the grief experience and its more modern expression. Yeah. We were taught a certain thing around how to grieve, and it's pretty narrow and limited. But there's a lot more information available now to help us look at being fully self-expressed. So that's being able to connect into all of your emotions and get present to that. And for me, the world of the performing arts has done that.
Yeah.
We can't all live a life in the performing arts, but we can live a life enhanced by the performing arts.
Yeah.
So, to tap into all those other expressions beyond IQ, and find our pivot point. Where's that point for you to be, finding joy in your own life? And, you know, most people that I'm working with at the moment find it really hard to stay unshakable in the face of external stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's my path, because I needed to find it myself, because the world wasn't ready for joyology, you know. Because when I used to be in, you know, first couple of years in New Zealand, I lived over there for 20 years, businesses would say to me, look, I'm sure you're a nice lady, Pat, but we actually have fun Friday after work.
Yeah.
You know, it's different now, but I had with a lot of phone calls,
yeah,
you know, and a lot of rebuttals. I talked to 100 people about the idea.
Yeah.
And after I talked to 100, and most were like, you're kidding, you're going to make a business out of that. I thought I need a powerful mentor. So my mentor was Mike Hutchison, who was the MD of Saatchi & Saatchi Auckland. So,
yeah, yeah. And, you know, companies are now a lot more understanding and open to these ideas of, you know, the company will run better if the people are feeling better about themselves. So they're bringing meditation in, and they're bringing people like yourself in, and allowing people to, you know, explore those other areas of their life that aren't working. And I mean, this is how I work with people too, because, you know, just because you're abundant in one area doesn't mean all areas of your life are working well. And if they're not working well, then that abundant area kind of doesn't feel as good. So it's really brilliant work that you do. So how can people get in contact with you, and what would you how would you recommend they get in contact with you? I'll have all the links here for them. And what do you offer?
Yeah, okay. My website is still my New Zealand website. So that's www.joyology.co.nz. I am transitioning over to a new site. And then the work that I've been doing lately, if anyone that's listening works in a business setting, my Transforming Workplace Wellbeing program might be of interest. I have a 30-day online program, Restoring Your Mojo, which is happening on Facebook.
Brilliant.
And then I have a longer-term program for people who are really committed to transform themselves.
Yeah.
So, and that's called Awakening and Transforming Humanity. Helping them to reach that unshakable place. And if anyone comes to my website, on my front page, they can get a free copy of my book, Humour Works. That's sitting there on the front page if they'd like to access a copy of that.
Oh, how wonderful. And your other book, Anti-Zach? I love the name of it.
Anti-Zach, obviously the play on Prozac. And the idea came to me on that tour with Pat Adams, but I didn't actually write the book until much later.
Yeah.
And it's all about, I'm not saying don't medicate. It's not for me to say that. However, alongside any other modality you take, A is for amuse, N is for enthuse, T is for trust, I is for intuition, Z is for zeal, A is for attitude, and C is for creativity. And all the chapters are under those headings with how you can find access to that.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's amazing. And they're all just different channels and different ways for people to reach out, depending on what stage they are at and what they're willing to accept as a new belief and a new truth. So it's been amazing talking with you, Pat. Thank you so much. You just do incredible work, and You know, and you're so humble about it too. But I mean, you're a big change maker, and I'm sure you've changed thousands of lives. And you know, there are probably just the way you have stories of Patch Adams and other people who've changed your lives. People are probably talking about you, how you changed their life too. So you've just created this huge ripple effect of joy, and it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
My
I hope our paths will cross again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much. So for everybody listening and watching, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I'll have all the links where you can connect with Pat, yeah, go check out her work and see how she can bring some more joy into your life. Thank you for watching this week's episode. I look forward to seeing you next time on Trish Rock TV. Bye for now.